Welcome again as we're looking at step 4 and we're approaching the underlying issues behind addiction. And you cannot begin to appreciate the underlying issues of addiction unless you understand the impact of a dysfunctional family. And that's what I want to look at today is what is a dysfunctional family, the impact that it has on children, and how it sets them up so perfectly for addiction. What I want to introduce by saying is this. If you were to look at the Bible and look at God's design for the human race, what was the means that He chose to pass from one generation to another? Truth, godliness, mentoring, counsel, support. It was the family. The family was His chief main option. His main tool, his main vessel to impact the next generation. So guess what will be Satan's primary attack point? The family. And Satan knows that if he can mess up families, he can mess up the kids from those families. And so what you see from early on in the Bible and history is just attacks at the family unit. And what we're finding in our culture today is the family unit that's just falling apart. It's just becoming a greater and greater problem all the time. And our culture is not finding any answers to it. Because they refuse to go to what the Bible says is a solution. But what I want to look at today is understanding how Satan has worked to mess up families and understanding what we mean by a dysfunctional family. There's been lots written about it. I think there's been lots of misunderstanding about it. Let me just say this at first. If you were to understand dysfunctional families, you need to understand it in this context. You would have an ideal family, which is a perfect family, which does not exist, just in theory. It's what every family would aim toward. The next, you would have a healthy family, and a healthy family is not a perfect family. It's a family that's able to respond properly to pain. It's a family that's able to deal with each member of that family in a way that has their needs met. That's healthy. Not perfect, healthy. Then there's dysfunctional. And the characteristic of a dysfunctional family, if you really want to get kind of the root of it, is that the parents make it all about them. So it's the parents become everything in that family, and everything has to revolve around them. The parents are not able to meet the needs of the kids, but they expect the kids to meet their needs. The parents' needs become paramount, and so the child grows up without having their needs met in a consistent way, but having to become parents to their parents. And so the kids become the parents become kids, and it's all about meeting the needs of the parents. That, by definition, is what we're talking about in a dysfunctional family. And there are 4 breeding grounds for dysfunctional family. Number 1 is addiction. So if one or both of the parents are addicts, then they're not concerned about the needs of the children. They're just totally self-preoccupied, and the kids have to take care of their siblings. The kids have to make the meals. The kids have to clean the house. The kids have to take care of their parents' feelings. The parents become paramount. The second breeding ground is if one of the parents or both the parents have a mental or a chronic illness. This isn't where the parent sets out to make it all about them. It just becomes that way. So if you have a mother who suffers with severe depression, all the kids walk around in eggshells. Be quiet, you don't want to get mom upset. Everything is about, oh, mom can't do that today because she's too sad. You have to make and take care of your siblings today because mom can't function. And what is important for a lot of people to realize is that a person with a chronic illness is very much like an addict father or mother. Because an addict father or mother is unpredictable. They are not able, one day they're able to give to the kids, the next day they're not. Same with a person with a chronic or a mental illness. They're very similar situations, and they breed the same kind of dysfunction. The third is if you're in a family where there's physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. Again, the parents are acting like children. They are punishing kids, beating up kids, abusing kids because they're angry. The kids aren't being what they want them to be. And it's not discipline anymore, it's abuse. And it's all the parents acting immature and venting and acting out on the kids. The final one, and this is a significant one for those raised in churches, is that if a child is raised in a family where one of the parents is just a rigid, authoritarian person, or they grow up in a church, that reinforces that. And what happens there is that the parent or the church says, you're not allowed to think for yourself. We'll do your thinking for you. We'll tell you what's right and wrong. We'll tell you what you should believe. You're not allowed to question anything. You're not allowed to raise anything for debate or to give another opinion. You just do not matter. All that matters is what we believe and what we want to practice. You conform. And if you don't want it, it's my way or the highway. And when a kid grows up in a church like that or in a family like that, they don't matter. They only matter if they conform. Otherwise, they're a problem. Several things that flow out of this that begin to characterize dysfunctional family is that the children are wounded, the parents are wounded, and that woundedness expresses itself in a number of ways. There's a lot of pain in the family like that. Children aren't getting their needs met. Parents are frustrated, angry people. And so there's just a lot of pain happening, but nobody has the tools to work or to deal with that pain. And so they have to respond in other ways, which we'll look at differently. There's a lot of shame. And what we've talked about for shame is that when parents send messages to kids, both by what they say and by what they do, that you don't matter. You are bad for having needs. You shouldn't be doing that because it's inconveniencing me. The child begins to believe something's wrong with me. I am a mistake. I am a burden. I'm a pain. I shouldn't be here. I'm not wanted. And that is a painful, painful belief for a child to begin to develop, and it's a painful message. They have a lot of insecurities because it doesn't seem to matter what they do. They can't please mom and dad. And so there's lots of walking on eggshells, insecurity, being around other people, and lots of fear. What will I get when I get home today? Will dad be angry? Will mom be down? Will I get yelled at? Whatever. Lots of fear begins to happen. There are 3 rules that mark dysfunctional families. You don't talk, you don't trust, and you don't feel. Those are the 3 foundational rules of a dysfunctional family. So when it says you don't talk, what that means, a couple things that means is this. If a child's needs do not matter, and they're made to feel guilty for having needs, so the parents are all excited when a baby is born, that their life is now complete, and then they find out this little kid has needs and cries, and that gets in the way of them doing what they want to do. Then they begin to punish the kid for having needs, or telling them they're selfish or bad for having needs. So the kid knows, if I tell my parents what I want, or what I need, or my dreams, I'll get criticized, or I'll be made to feel guilty or punished. So they learn to communicate through code. They hint at stuff, they pout a little, they walk around without saying anything but with a sulking look on their face, all trying to say, I have a need, please read my mind because I can't tell you. That becomes the communication style, and most kids who grow up in a home like that know that to survive you have to be a mind reader, supposedly. The next thing is you don't talk about the problem because you might rock the boat. You don't say, that's not fair what happened. No, everybody will get upset. And the last thing you want to do is have people upset, so you don't talk about it. And then the next thing is you don't tell anybody else about what's going on in this family. You got secrets to protect. Do not talk about these secrets. So the don't talk rule is huge. The second one, don't feel. Most kids, if they find that a dysfunctional family has three emotions, and I usually mad, sad, and glad. And it usually is dad's allowed to be mad, mom's allowed to be sad, and the kids always have to be glad. And those are the rules. And so emotions or anything else, shut down. You're not allowed to be sad, only mom is. You have to stuff that. You're not allowed to be angry, only dad is. You have to stuff that. And so all emotions outside of being happy are considered bad. And you learn to stuff them, to push them down, to wear masks, to deny that you're upset, to deny that you're hurting. You go through all of that stuff and you distort everything in order to try and not feel anything. And the last one, do not trust. Most children have opened up to parents only to have it used against them, or only to have parents blab it to their friends. And you quickly realize you can't trust those closest to you. That's the only way to survive. Other characteristics are poor boundaries. Either everybody's into everybody else's business so that we do everything together. We can't do anything apart because that wouldn't be a good family. Or there's walls. You don't do anything together. You're in your room, I'm in my room. We all do our own thing. Nobody joins together. A lot of kids, when it comes to boundaries, will say there was only one boundary in our family, and that was whatever dad was. If dad was in a good mood, we all had to be in a good mood. We didn't know what we felt. We only knew what dad felt, and we just felt whatever dad felt. And so we just picked up his mood, and it became our mood. And so that lack of boundaries, of being able to be myself, to be sad. A lot of kids grow up with where parents say, do you want to go out and do this? And they say, no, thank you. And that boundary just gets mowed right down. No never meant no. If you said no, it wasn't respected. It was just pushed over, and what you wanted didn't matter. And so boundaries is a tough thing for them. Again, if you have a feeling you're being a need, you're being selfish. And you're always told you're selfish. And really it's mom and dad are allowed to be selfish. You guys aren't. But if you ever express a need, you're being selfish and you're made to feel guilty. Control manipulation becomes the game. If I'm going to get my need met, I got to manipulate. I got to somehow control everything, or else I'm not going to get my needs met. And so the priority for kids growing up in that is to learn how to manipulate and control people. And then the final characteristic is that kids who grow up in dysfunction live with contradictory messages. I call them push-pull messages. It's, I love you, go away. I need you, quit bugging me. Those are those conflicting messages that they get all the time. I'll be there for you, but not today, maybe tomorrow. And so it's a constant, well, what's true? What do I believe? I don't know. I'm getting two messages on an ongoing basis. And then the one they get is, don't do as I do, or do as I say, don't do as I do. And again, that's a mixed message, and that's what they learn to live with. Many, many studies have been done of children who have grown up in that kind of dysfunction. And what they've realized is that the kids who grew up in that, when they become adults, they all seem to have very similar characteristics. And so I have about 25 things that have been studied about kids who grow up, and they're called adult children of dysfunction. And what it means is they're adults, but they're still children. So they're adult children, and they come out of dysfunction. So I'm going to go very quickly through this list of the things that characterize these people as adults. And again, if you were raised in that, you'll probably find that all of these describe you, and you'll be wondering if I've been putting cameras in your house to watch you, but I haven't. So here we go. If you grew up in this, we guess at what normal is. So when you grow up in chaos, where your needs aren't met, that to you is normal. And so you initially begin to think all families operate this way. And then if you are my age, you grew up watching Leave It to Beaver. If you're a bit younger than I am, you grew up watching the Cosby Family. And you think, oh, is that what a normal family's like? Perfect? Oh, okay. But you don't know. You do not have a clue how a normal family and normal relationships operate. You can only fantasize or guess. The second thing, we have difficulty following a project through from beginning to end. I always tell clients that alcoholics are the best people to hire for the first 5 days. They are the best employees, and then after that, they're the worst. And most addicts are great starters, terrible finishers. And that's true of kids that grow up in dysfunction. We lie when it would be just as easy to tell the truth. And that's, again, just the reality. We judge ourselves without mercy, and we tend to have low self-esteem. Very hard on ourselves. Very hard about what we require of ourselves. Perfectionists. Beat ourselves up over the smallest mistakes. We have difficulty having fun, and we take ourselves very seriously. And you had to survive. You had to always be alert, always on guard, always aware, always serious. We overreact to changes over which we have no control, and we generally overreact out of fear. If you grew up in chaos, even though it was chaos, there was something predictable about it. And so the worst thing that can happen is something be different, because that usually meant trouble. And so if everybody was happy for a day, you went, uh-oh, that means the other shoe's going to drop. And so as soon as something is different or it's not normal, there's fear of the unknown that comes in. And we overreact. And we blow it all out of proportion. We are impulsive. And the reality of people that grow up in this and become adults is they make these decisions on impulse that end up being stupid decisions, that end up creating all kinds of chaos, that end up taking tons of energy to fix. If they'd only taken the time and energy to think through all of their options in the first place, they'd be miles ahead. But they don't. They act out of impulse. We feel we're different from other people. Something in us feels that because we grew up in that, we're weird. Others just are not like us and don't understand that. And you can be in a room full of people that grew up in that, and they'll still think they're all different from each other. That's just the reality of it. We constantly seek approval and confirmation. We easily lose our identity in the process, and we become chameleons. If you grew up in a home where you were always bad for wanting anything, you were a pain, you were being selfish because you wanted to play a sport like the other kids in the neighborhood, you just felt that something was wrong with you. You couldn't do anything that was good. And so you have this craving for somebody to approve of you, somebody to affirm you. And what easily happens is you become a chameleon. You meet somebody and it's, I'll be whatever you want me to be. I'll change colors, I'll wear whatever mask, I'll act whatever part you want me to be, just like me. Just affirm me. Just say you're proud of me. And you lose your identity. You don't even know who you are after a while because you've worn so many masks in the process. We are either super responsible or super irresponsible. We take the world on our shoulders, or we don't care about anything. Whatever. I don't care. We have difficulty with intimate relationships. And what we're going to see in the next 4 weeks is that the greatest damage that I find from a dysfunctional home is it sets people up so they cannot have healthy relationships. And it sets people up to have all their relationships fail. And that is a huge issue for people in addiction. Because of the trouble trusting, they have trouble opening up. They have lots of walls, lots of masks, and you just can't have intimacy with all of that baggage. It is easier to be concerned for others than it is to be with ourselves. Most people who grow up in dysfunction have spent their life caring for other people's emotions and needs, and they know how to do that. They're very bad at self-care, of taking care of themselves. And so what happens in recovery is they see all these hurting people, they start to worry about them and try and fix them up, they neglect themselves, and pretty soon they're burnt out and they say, screw everything, I'm going back to the drugs. And that happens. We are extremely loyal, even in the face of evidence that the loyalty is undeserved. Kids that grow up in that just have this need to be loyal. It's like the family said, we're going to stick together, no matter how bad it gets. And what parents often try to do in a family like this is to make the child feel all you need is this family. You don't need anybody from the outside. You don't need to go to other resources or other people. You just need us. And they fostered this loyalty, and that it was bad to look outside of the family for help or support. We are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment and will do anything to hold on to a relationship, even if it is sick and abusive. Abandonment is a constant theme of kids who grow up in this, because the fear is if I didn't take care of my parents, they would leave me, they would divorce, I would be out on my own, I would be put into custody, and abandonment is a huge thing. What is very, very interesting is that most people growing up in that choose relationships trying to get their abandonment needs met when they actually choose people who will abandon them. And what happens is they choose somebody that'll just shower them with attention that has all of their same issues. And then they get in this relationship and they both have walls. And they don't want to get real. They don't want to get honest. And so nobody wants to open up. And so they start to have conflict. And they start to push each other away because you're getting too close. You're getting too close. And then they just drive that person away so the person abandons them. And they go, there I go, abandon again. And they set it up right from the beginning. We become isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. Isolation is much more comfortable because you don't get hurt. Anybody in authority in my past has been abusive or have hurt me, so authority figures scare me. Anybody in authority in my life in the past has had all kinds of rules. They have pushed me down, squashed me, not let me have any needs or wants. So authority is just a bad word. To them, that's a big problem. We are frightened by angry people and by personal criticism. When you grow up with anger, you get scared by anger. Or usually you become angry as a way of scaring others. But criticism is something that you just have this antenna, always on the go, picking up people's body language and the tone of their voice to say, are they criticizing me? Because if they are, they're going to hear about it. Criticism is something you're always alert to because you fear it so much. We live with lots of anger. We may have pushed it down. We may have hidden it, but it's there, boiling beneath the surface. We get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others. So if somebody says, please do this for me, please do this for me, and you say, sorry, I can't. I've got other commitments. Well, you're a terrible friend. And then you beat yourself up. Oh, I'm guilty. You feel guilty. I should maybe have done it. I should have worked it out. Instead of saying, well, that's their problem. I'm sorry, I can't do it. And being okay with that. We live from the viewpoint of victims because you were victims, and we tend to be attracted to other victims because we feel their pain. We know, wow, they've gone through what I've gone through. Oh, they need so much love. And so we're attracted to other victims. And then we tend to confuse love and pity. So we see another victim and our heart goes out to them and we pity them and we feel, I'm in love with them. And then we tend to love people who are victims who need rescuing. And we think we're loving them or we're in love with them when we're just pitying somebody who needs rescued. We tend to look for immediate rather than deferred gratification. Any kid growing up in dysfunction said, if Dad promised me an ice cream cone today, I better take it now. Because if I wait 2 hours, he could be drunk or gone. So I better do it now. And so if some need came up and there was a way to meet that need, do it immediately. To wait is to maybe not get it met. And so they become immediate gratification focused. We have an addiction to excitement, chaos, risk-taking behaviors. When you grow up in chaos and that feels normal, and you start to have a normal life, that feels boring. It feels like something's missing. This needs to get spiced up a notch. So you seek out risk-taking behaviors, chaos, excitement, anything to spruce up a boring existence. And that leads to all kinds of different things. Finally, we have stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhoods and have lost the ability to feel or express our feelings because it hurts so much. So we stuff them and deny that they exist. And then when a person finds drugs and alcohol, they find the perfect way to stuff. Because I don't have to feel anymore. I can escape the pain and it becomes my way out. So those are the 23 characteristics of a person who's grown up in that. Again, what I want you to see from that, if you look at those 23 things, that is the prime breeding ground for an addict. Because that's a person living in pain, a person afraid of relationships, afraid of dealing with emotions, afraid of dealing with life, and addiction becomes a wonderful way of coping. And so in the next 4 weeks, like I said, we're going to take that a little bit further to show how it sets a person up so that they're unable to experience healthy relationships. But let's pray. Thanks. Father, you know what Satan has been up to for years, to so distort your design for a family that messes up generations and the cycle continues for generation after generation. But I'm so thankful that you have promised to bring healing and to stop the cycle, and that people can change and that they can find healthy relationships and healthy families. It takes time, it takes a lot of work, but it is possible by your grace and through your Spirit's strength. And so I pray that you would help people to look to you and that you would give them the hope that if they follow you, they can experience what you designed for them to experience. And we thank you. Amen.